I'm explaining to you today. About 5 o'clock, I got that phone call. The jury just came out. Not guilty on all 3 counts. The young prosecutor threw a tantrum in the courtroom. He said, "How could you come out with such a verdict?" Well, we found out the first vote in the jury room was 11-1 for conviction. A little gray-haired grandmother had voted not guilty. I can just visualize those other 11 on the jury turning to that little gray-haired grandmother and saying, "Lady, what in the world is the matter with you? This guy violated the law." He had violated the lower law. But it just so happens this lower law is not good law. It is not valid law. It is law that needs to be trash canned. And that little gray-haired grandmother, she started talking. And right away, one of the other ladies on the jury said, "Yeah, I heard about that. I heard about that." And so the next vote was 10-2. And when that jury came out, it was 12 votes not guilty on all counts. We don't have to have this absolutely impossible majority that it takes to control the Congress to get rid of that bad law. We don't need a majority to elect a president who will sign a law that eliminates the Internal Revenue Service and the graduated income tax. We don't need that. We don't need to change all the faces on the federal bench. All we have to do is educate our fellow countrymen to where we can have that 1 out of 20, because you see 65% of our fellow Americans aren't even registered to vote. They've given up on the system. And then you've got all these people that don't want to serve on the jury. They'll make all kinds of excuses. But you see, the individual who has the information is not going to try to get off of that jury. He's not going to make excuses. That individual who has the information is going to put on a blank face. He's going to go into that courtroom determined to get on that jury. He is not going to say anything or do anything that would jeopardize his opportunity to be on that jury. Here about 3 years ago, we had a very critical case. The government wanted to prosecute a very high-profile tax protester. They had him charged with about 8 different indictments. That trial went on for several days. Then it went to the jury. And the jury went through a day of deliberations. Then they went through another day. Then they went through another day, and they finally came out not guilty on all counts. We found out we had a retired military man who came to that courthouse on that trial date. He was noticed that he was to be on the jury panel, and he said, "I was determined to get on that jury." And he was able to get on that jury. And he informed the other 11, and they came out not guilty on all counts. This is what we need to see in this country. This is what we're going to have to see in this country if we want to solve the Federal Reserve Bank problem. All these different problems that are confronting us, the different agencies, OSHA, all the rest of them. This is how we are going to have to do it. And we're going to have to put ourselves up here at that position, in this position where we can use our votes to turn the system around. You've been a very good audience, and I thank you. Back a few years ago, a number of years ago, back about 1976 and 77, we started having meetings in such as this in the Holiday Inn Convention Center back in Billings, Montana, where I come from. And we had run a TV special, and we had a very nice crowd that showed up the next night at a meeting there in that convention center. We had about 450 people. And of course, I was teaching the jury principle and the function of the jury. But that night I got up there and introduced myself to that crowd, and I said something that I thought at the moment was rather funny. I said, I want to welcome all of you IRS agents that are here. At that point in time, we had IRS agents that attended most of our meetings. And I said, I want to welcome all you IRS agents that are here. And of course, today, right here now, if we have an IRS agent here, I want to welcome you here. But back there, I made a mistake. I said, I'm glad to have you here, but we can't guarantee your safety. There were about 450 people there, and there were 3 fellows in the audience that jumped up like they'd set on attack or something and ran out the door. Everybody laughed. I mean, those fellows gave themselves away. I like to have IRS agents in our audiences, and I like to have U.S. attorneys, and I don't know if I've ever had a federal judge, but I would hope so. I do know that we ran a 1-hour TV special back in New Hampshire. It cost me $7,000 to run that 1-hour TV special in Manchester, New Hampshire, back in about February of 1984. We ran that program, a 1-hour TV special, and we titled it Hope for America. We didn't get too much response from that program, but I got one letter that made it all worthwhile. I got a letter from one of the justices of the Supreme Court for the state of New Hampshire on the Supreme Court stationery, and he said this. He says, I watched your TV special, and he said, I want you to know that I agree that you are 100% right in what you're saying. That made it all worthwhile. You see, that $7,000, I was investing in my country. I wasn't investing in a criminal government. I was investing in my country because I am convinced that my grandchildren will get a much better return on that kind of an investment than if I were to have bought stocks or bonds or whatever and pass those on to my heirs when I die. I am interested in making an investment that will pay off in the future. And I do not believe that I can invest any better than investing in the process of informing my fellow Americans. Now, I have some questions here that you folks have put out here. You've been writing these in the last hour, hour and a half, and I am not going to be able to address them all. But I'm going to address the ones that I think are most important and the ones that will go with what I have been saying here today. The first question is this. Can you explain how the grand jury is seated? Who picks the members? That is a very good question, a very vital question. We know that we have a criminal system out there in the Justice Department and the federal judges. They are manipulating the thing at times. We know that. We have a question in here telling about how the U.S. attorney fired the foreman of a grand jury here in this area because apparently he was not working with the U.S. attorney. He was working for the country rather than for the government. That question is in here too. But I want to address this, how the grand jury is supposedly, or it is supposed to be picked. The federal grand jury is to be picked from the voter registration list. The same process as they use to pick the juries for the petit juries, the criminal trials, the civil trials. They're supposed